All right, so in this video, I'm actually going to show you how I complete a CMA. So I'm going to log into Bright. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to do a public record search for the property that I am listing. So that way I can get all the information on that home. And I actually have one saved here for you. So I'm just going to pull that up. Oops, I want to click edit. But what I do is I look at the public record so that way I can get an idea of what type of home it is. I want to know the square footage above grade versus below grade, bathrooms, bedrooms, anything that I can find on this home. Acreage, what type of furnace does it have? Anything that I can pull from public record. And you might be saying, well, can't you get this information from the seller? You can, and you should, but it's just helpful too to just double check it against public record. And that way, if there's any discrepancies, you can go over that with the seller. So you can see here, this is all the information on my subject property. And then what I am going to do is I am going to search residential sale for homes within 3 miles of that property. Let's try. There we go. So now if you're in a city that's like maybe Carlisle or Harrisburg, you might need to make this shorter of a distance, okay? But if you're more rural, you might need to do 3, maybe even 5, but try to stay as close to the subject as possible. One thing that you want to keep in mind, especially in cities, one quadrant of Carlisle is going to sell very different than the other quadrant. So you want to know your micro market as best as you can, and you'll learn that as you look at comps. So if you don't know that yet, it's okay, don't panic. And then we're going to look at closed within 800 days. And I also like to pull an expired or a withdrawn if possible. And now here, I want to try to keep my comps. You can see I'm already at 867 matches. That's too much, right? So we want to narrow this down. So I'm looking at a ranch home. That's detached. We're down to 103, so we're going to keep going. Now, because I'm looking at a home that's about 1,000 square foot, I don't want to look at homes that are 2,000 square feet. So I'm going to look at 800 to 1,200. Now we're down to 46. I know we have a small lot, so I want to look everything under an acre. Let's try maybe half. Still at 38. We're going to go ahead and choose has a basement. That brings us down to 32. So we're going to go ahead and just check these out. Now, what I like to do is I like to organize it by distance. So I click this distance and I have it going from shortest to furthest away. And I am just going to start flipping through them. Does this home look like the one that I'm trying to do a CMA for? And I just start going through and selecting ones that look like they might be a good comp. Okay. And once you get a good couple down, and it's okay, however many you have is fine. let's say I like this one. And now when you're doing this, I'm just pro tip because I don't want this video to be too long for you, but you want to go through the pictures, does it look similar? This one's a nice comp. This one's very similar. So I'm going to keep this one. And I'm coming down through here as well, and I'm looking at the square feet. I'm looking at the flooring type, and this is going to really help me figure out which ones I actually want to use. So now I'm going to click refine and click narrow. So now I'm only looking at a handful versus, 40 different potential comps. And this is where I really start diving even deeper. So we have a 2-bedroom home with 1 bath. So I really don't want to look at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The thing with 2 bedrooms is they sell very different than 3 bedrooms. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and discard those 2. And now I'm left with some good comps that I want to use. So then what you can do is under actions, click CMA, and that's actually going to generate a CMA for you right in Bright. You can select your client name. Oops. Oh, that's because I already did one for them. But you can type it in right here. Description. Pages is what you select. I like to have a cover sheet, a summary of the comparables, a 4-up listings report that just shows them side by side. I like to show them my price adjustments. I like to compare days on market, list price versus close price, a map so they can see how close they are. That way, if we have one that's a little too far away, I can explain, maybe this one may not be a strong comp because of location, but it was a strong comp because of, similarities. Then you'll go do a pricing recommendation. I like to include either pitfalls of overpricing or effective overpricing. I'm going to take one away. I like to explain the market analysis and then give just steps to a positive showing, some tips and tricks on how to have a great showing. Subject, you can pull in from public records by typing in the property address and adding. Cover information, you can actually upload a photo here. You can add their info here to have it as customizable as possible. You can also edit your information to make sure your info is up to date. And then your comparables will show here. Okay, and here's the map. You can see that some of these are a little further apart than I would like. So, if you don't like how far away they are, you could always come back into comparables and add more. All right, so you can play with this a couple times. You can go back and forth. Now, when I finally did this, that was about as good as I could get. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the one that I created already, but they were a little further apart than I would have liked because it's just there's not a lot of inventory. When there's not a lot of inventory, there's not a lot of comps. So you can see I was able to find them after going back and forth a couple times. I was able to find some that were a little closer to my subject property. And then I went in and I made my adjustments. Now I like to do this in single line mode. I will go in every single comparable and I look at if there's a seller disclosure here that I can read. I will read all of this information. I look at what type of heating and cooling it has. I read the description to see if it had anything that I couldn't tell from pictures. For example, it has replacement windows. That's something that's hard to tell from a photo. So I'm getting all of this information on the property. So that way, when I'm making adjustments, I know what I'm doing, right? Always deduct seller help. So if there was $8,400 seller help, deduct that. I do about $5,000 per full bath. And you can see because I typed 5,000 up here, it made the adjustment automatically for me here. I did keep one 3-bedroom comp because the square footage was so similar. I do about $30 per above grade square foot, $2,500 for a half bath, and $10 per below grade square foot. So that's a finished basement, only $10 for a finished basement per square foot. Now, I'm not an appraiser. This is how I was taught, and I do read appraisal reports, and I think these are pretty good averages. So pro tip is definitely read those appraisal reports as you represent buyers, because the more you get to know those numbers, the better you'll get at these CMAs. 10,000 per acre. Here's my adjustments for heat. So the comp that I am doing actually has baseboard electric, but it does have central air. So you can see I had to take off money because it had worse heat than what was available in the comps. Now, because the other ones, or this comp here didn't have central air, but our property did, I gave us 5,000. Garage spaces, I do 4,000 per garage bay. Now you might have to do something different if it's like a big garage bay that can fit like an RV, right? So you got to take those things into consideration. I do about 5,000 per fireplace. In this case, I did 2,000 because they had a pellet stove, which I think does still create, the way it was decorated created some ambiance, and yet it wasn't a legit fireplace. So I did make adjustments for that. If my year builts are very far apart, I will make adjustments there, but mine were all pretty close. There was none that were waterfront. If I have well versus public, or public sewer versus septic, I will make adjustments there. Public sewer is definitely better than septic whenever you're doing a CMA. Now, some other things we have to take in consideration is I try to keep these as close to condition as possible. And you figure that out just by looking at the photos and reading the MLS. Now you can see here that I did mention underneath suggested list price, some of the homes had better condition, and yet this home that the subject is in the best location, which is very true. It's in a much better location than all the rest. So I didn't make a condition adjustment for that reason. The condition was close enough that, it wasn't like a complete fixer-upper compared to turnkey. Theirs was just maybe a little bit more updated, but because their location was better, I felt like it evened it out. On the high end, I said to go ahead and list for 205, and you can see why, because my adjustable comparable price on the high end is 204, and we're in a seller's market right now as of me doing this video, especially that area, especially Rance Homes, they are flying off the market. So I think it's completely acceptable to ask for high. And then I said, I think you're going to attract a bidding war, and I think it would be great if you got 215. I made a couple notes. In Columbia, there are currently only 19 homes for sale. Of those 19, only 11 are under 200,000. Of those, only 2 are detached. So that meant 9 homes that are for sale under 200,000 were townhomes. Only one of those was a ranch. That ranch home was listed at $179.9 and is in great shape, but in a much less desirable location. So it's near train tracks and a salvage yard. Your home is in a much more desirable location. So reinforcing that I really do feel like we can go for this 204 number. And fun fact, we did. We sold this house for $215. So I was right on. So it's looking at comps, but it's also using the market, the current market situation to help guide you. When you are able to pull this information, so I went back through that residential search and I just searched for homes for sale in Columbia, it gave me a better picture of how desirable that ranch home is going to be. The more you do this, the more this will come naturally to you. But these are all things that you want to take into consideration when doing your CMA. Now I'm going to go ahead and click finish and save. And now you can actually email the CMA directly to your client if you'd like. What I do is I'll say like CMA attached. I'll put my notes in the email body that I put on the CMA, and then I'll let them know that I'm going to send links to the comps in a separate email, because when they get this email, it's going to be a PDF that they just kind of flip through. It doesn't let them click on the comps. So then I will actually come back then to my comparables. I will go into list view, agent one line. I'll write down the addresses, and then I'll do a residential search for those addresses here. You can see that as you add an address, you can click more and then just keep adding. Once I have all the comps there, I'll click results, and then I'm able to select the ones that I used, and I just email them by clicking this email button. So only the ones I selected will send, and then I will send, and I'll put in the subject, comps used in CMA. And then that way the seller then can also look through the photos just like I did, and see the differences. Now I will then go over the CMA. I try to do this in person, but sometimes when you have to move quickly, this is a good option. And I will, go through and say, hey, I read all the seller disclosures. I went back through and I read all the information on these comps. I pulled how many homes were available for sale right now. Who are you competing against? One other ranch home that's probably going to be gone by the time we even list. And that's how I'm confident that we're able to sell your home for 205 and hope for a bidding war and get 215. And I was right. So anyway, that's how you do a CMA in Bright. What I do then is I do the listing presentation in Command, but instead of putting the comps in the Command listing presentation, if I'm doing this in person, I just insert my CMA here. I'll just show you quickly. When you pull up your CMA, you can click View. So that way you can then print it and include it in the listing packet. I think it'll just set you apart by having just all of those facts ready to go. And of course, it's the spinning wheel of death for my video, but when it does pop up, you can see here that you can download and print, and you can just kind of see how it looks. Here's the 4-up report. I just like this because it does compare it side by side. You'll see the different graphs showing days on market, list price versus sale price, the map. Here's my note summary. See here that Bright automatically puts in here the legal verbiage that this is not a done by an appraisal, that is just your best guesstimate basically with your expertise, but that you are not a licensed appraiser, I should say. So there you have it. That's the CMA process in Bright.